Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. The Galactic Fleet celebrated victory. Then Earth's dreadnoughts appeared. Fleet Admiral Zorn Krell raised his central drinking appendage, the bioluminescent fluid in his ceremonial chalice catching the light of three nearby suns, the Bridge of the Magnificent. Dominion flagship of the United Galactic Armada erupted in a cacophony of celebratory clicks, whistles, and rumbles. From 24 different species, comrades, allies, warriors of the 87 worlds, Krell's voice sacs inflated to project his words across the massive command deck. Today, we have taught the upstart humans a lesson they won't soon forget if they live long enough to remember anything at all. The gathered officers roared with laughter. Commander Plex, Krell's second-in-command, slapped his carapace in amusement, so hard that one of his decorative medals went flying across the room, nearly taking out the eye of a junior communications officer. Did you see them run their pitiful colony ships, scattering like Voro beetles when you lift a rock? Lex wheezed. Through his spiracles, 3 of their border worlds neutralized in less than a standard week. In the mighty humans, not so mighty now, are they? Krell nodded, his 17 facial tentacles rippling with satisfaction. The sensation of victory was intoxicating, like the time he'd accidentally inhaled spore dust on the moons of Real Mine and spent 3 days convinced he was a quantum particle. The High Council said we should be cautious. Krell continued, gesturing dramatically with his free 3 appendages. They said these humans have only been spacefaring for 2 centuries, but they advanced faster than any species we've encountered. What did we find? Outdated shield technology, weapon systems of juvenile Theon could have designed navigation computers that my egg bearer would call primitive. The holographic display at the center of the bridge showed their recent conquests. 3 human colonial outposts, now reduced to smoking ruins. Minimal CULs on the Armada side, complete devastation for the humans. The strategic data scrolled beneath the imagery, confirming what everyone already knew. Total victory. Commander Plex sidled up next to Krell. Lowering his voice, the intelligence officer reports that the humans have gone silent across all known communication channels. Their remaining colonies appear to be powering down defenses. Assessment suggests they're preparing to surrender already. Krell's face furls deflated slightly with disappointment. I expected at least another week of entertainment. These humans have quite the reputation. You know, all that chatter about their indomitable spirit and never surrender attitude. Lieutenant Vox, the young sensory officer, whose species could detect emotions across vast distances, suddenly stiffened at her station there. Her normally blue skin blanched to a sickly gray. Admiral, I'm sensing something. Kell waved a dismissive tentacle. Yes, Lieutenant, fear despair. The humans are broken. We've established that. No, Sir. Vox whispered, her compound eyes widening. Not fear, not from the humans. It's anticipation, excitement, even almost like she never finished her sentence, as the alert systems suddenly blazed to life. Warning indicators flooded every screen on the bridge. The celebration died instantly, replaced by the efficient movements of trained military personnel rushing to battle stations. Report. Krell barked, all signs of vanishing from his posture, multiple spatial distortions forming at coordinates 227 mark 43. The tactical officer shouted, energy signatures unlike anything in our database. They're massive, Sir. Krell turned to the viewport just as space itself seemed to tear open, revealing what looked like gaping wounds in the fabric of reality. From these ruptures emerged shapes that at first appeared impossible, massive, angular, and darker than the void itself. What in the name of the ancestral brood? Kell muttered. The celebration chalice slipped from his grasp, he shattering on the deck with a sound that seemed to echo ominously throughout the suddenly silent bridge. As the unknown vessels emerged from the spatial tiers, Krell's mind flashed back to the events that had started this conflict 6 standard months earlier. The Grand Assembly Hall of the United Galactic Council buzzed with the nervous energy of 236 species representatives. Krell, then just a fleet commander, stood at attention behind High Chancellor Mora, a wizened Xandari, whose translucent skin revealed the slow pulse of her 6 hearts. The humans have established another outpost in the Vegas Sector Morta announced, her voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics, that makes 17 unauthorized expansions in the last decade. Ambassador Tula, representative of the Mercantile Consortium, fluttered her wing membranes in irritation. They don't respect established boundaries. Every species must apply for expansion permits. We've all followed the protocols for 12,000 years. To be fair, interjected Ambassador No of the Philosophical Collective, his crystalline form refracting light. As he spoke, we never formally invited humans to join the council. They discovered faster than light travel independently and expanded outward before encountering any of us. Krell remembered rolling all four of his eyes. The Philosophical Collective always tried to see both sides of every issue, so tiresome that doesn't excuse their behavior. Chancellor Morta countered. We sent diplomatic envoys 3 times. They listened politely, then continued expanding. The very next solar cycle they're like, what's that Earth organism? The one that reproduces uncontrollably. Rabbits offered a junior aide. Exactly like space rabbits. Morse tendrils quivered with indignation. The council erupted in overlapping arguments. Some called for patience. Humans were young as a spacefaring species. Others demanded immediate action. Their resource consumption was destabilizing carefully balanced star systems. Then came the incident at Proxima Andori. The holographic display in the center of the hall switched to footage from a scientific outpost, a galactic research vessel approaching a gas giant. Then, without warning, a human military ship appearing from behind the planet's moon. Weapons charged provoked aggression, shouted Ambassador Gorks of the Militant Alliance, pounding his chitis fist on the podium. What the council didn't know, what KR himself didn't discover until weeks later, was that the human ship had been responding to a distress call. The same atmospheric phenomena that made the gas giant scientifically interesting also disrupted communications. The humans thought they were rescuing one of their mining operations from pirates. By the time the misunderstanding became clear, the research vessel had fired defensive measures, destroying a human shuttle. The human warship retaliated, obliterating the research vessel and its 63 crew members. The council voted for war that same day with only 7 species abstaining. Krell had been promoted to fleet admiral and given command of the punitive expedition. His orders were clear: demonstrate overwhelming force, neutralize the most strategic human outposts, and bring them to the negotiating table properly humbled and ready to accept the council's authority. The first engagements had gone exactly as planned. Human defenses proved surprisingly basic compared to their remarkable achievements in propulsion and terraforming. Their weaponry was largely projectile-based kinetic kill vehicles and nuclear warheads, centuries behind the directed energy weapons and gravitational disruptors of the Galactic Armada. The Council's intelligence suggested that humans had concentrated their scientific efforts on expansion rather than military technology, a species more interested in building than destroying. How refreshing! How naive! 3 border colonies neutralized in 5 days, Krell had reported back to the Council. Minimal civilian casualties as instructed. Their military response has been disorganized and ineffective. Assessment: humans will sue for peace within 2 standard weeks. Chancellor Morta had seemed pleased. Excellent work, Admiral. Continue as planned. Show them enough of our power to ensure they understand their place, but not so much that they feel they have nothing to lose. What none of them, not Krell, not the High Council, not their most advanced predictive AI, had anticipated was that humans had been holding back, that what they'd seen so far was merely the visible tip of a very large, very dangerous iceberg. As these memories raced through Krell's mind, he stared at the massive shapes now fully emerged from the spatial rifts. The enormity of his miscalculation became devastatingly clear. The tactical display now showed the emerging vessels in greater detail, and the bridge crew of the magnificent Dominion fell into stunned silence. Those can't possibly be human ships, Commander Plex whispered, his mandibles clicking nervously. Our intelligence reports indicated nothing of this scale in their fleet, but they were human vessels. That much was becoming clear as the identification systems struggled to categorize the behemoths now taking position around the Armada. The smallest of them dwarfed Krell's flagship by at least a factor of 5. How Krell demanded of his intelligence officer, Lieutenant Draz, who was frantically scrolling through data files. How did we miss this? Drew's normally methodical demeanor had crumbled, sir, according to all our reconnaissance diplomatic exchanges and intercepted communications. Humans possessed only light cruisers and defensive platforms. These are something else entirely. Science officer Rel approached the central console, their tentacles wavering with excitement despite the tension. Admiral, preliminary analysis suggests these vessels weren't hidden, they simply didn't exist until now, explained Krell. Snapped evidence points to some form of rapid fabrication technology. These ships may have been assembled in days, perhaps even hours after our initial attack. Plex scoffed. Impossible. Our most advanced shipyards require months to construct a light cruiser. No species could. No humans have always been obsessed with manufacturing efficiency. Relic interrupted. Remember their historical records from their pre-space era, their world wars. They converted entire industrial sectors to military production in weeks. What we're seeing is that same concept evolved over 2 centuries and applied to spacefaring technology. The tactical officer's voice cut through the discussion. Sir, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the human vessels. It appears they powering weapon systems unlike anything in our database. Krell suddenly recalled a briefing he dismissed months ago, a theoretical paper by a xenoanthropologist suggesting that humans had deliberately compartmentalized their technology. The paper proposed that humanity maintain separate development tracks, one visible to outsiders focusing on colonization, and another hidden track dedicated to defense. At the time, Kell had laughed at the notion. Paranoid nonsense, he'd called it now, as the massive human dreadnoughts move with impossible precision to surround his fleet. That laughter felt hollow indeed. Blurt all vessels, Krell ordered, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his primary heart. Battle formations, and open a communication channel to their command ship. Which one is the command ship, sir? Asked the communications officer. Krell's gaze fixed on the center vessel, a monstrosity that made the others look small by comparison. Its hull was midnight black, absorbing rather than reflecting the light of the nearby stars, giving it an almost 2-dimensional appearance against the backdrop of space. That one, he said, simply the one that looks like it was built to end worlds. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing not the expected terror-stricken human face, but a calm, almost amused-looking woman with copper-colored skin and silver streak hair pulled back in a tight military bun. Her uniform was simple matte black, with no visible rank insignia, save for a small silver pin shaped like Earth's ancient Roman eagle. This is Admiral Elena Rise of the Earth Defense Force. Dreadnought reckoning, she stated without preamble. I believe you've been looking for us. Krell drew himself up to his full height. This is Fleet Admiral Zor Krell of the United Galactic Armada. Your colonies have violated established territorial boundaries and responded with violence to peaceful enforcement. Surrender your vessels and withdraw to your home system or face obliteration. The human admiral's mouth twitched slightly at one corner. That's an interesting interpretation of events. Admiral Krell, particularly the peaceful part. Tell me, do you consider the orbital bombardment of New Montana peaceful? The 3,000 civilians on Providence Station might disagree if they weren't dead. Kell felt his secondary heart skip a beat. Those casualties weren't in his report. Pan, the operation had been surgical, targeting only military installations unless... And your intelligence was flawed. Rise continued as if reading his thoughts. Those military barracks on New Montana, a university dormitory, that weapons research lab on Providence, a medical facility developing cures for scent fever, regrettable collateral damage. Krell responded stiffly, but inevitable in conflict. We agree on that much. At least the human expression hardened, which is why we kept these. She gestured to the space around her, presumably indicating the massive ships in reserve. We hope your kind might be reasonable. We hoped wrong. As she spoke, more spatial rifts tore open across Krell's tactical display. 5, then 15, then 30 more massive vessels appeared, each emerging from what his science officer was now identifying as artificial wormholes. Impossible. Breathe, Commander Plex. The energy requirements for such technology would be beyond anything we've achieved. Finish, Science Officer Ralph. They've harnessed dark energy As a propulsion mechanism, the theoretical work exists in our archives, but the practical application has eluded us for millennia. Admiral Razak's voice continued, drawing Kirk's attention back to the screen. Humanity has been watching your Galactic Council for 80 years, Admiral. We intercepted your transmissions long before you knew we existed. We studied your languages, your technologies, your weaknesses. Each of the human dreadnoughts was now moving into position, their formations displaying a level of coordination that suggested either unprecedented crew training, or more likely it got some form of neural interface system far beyond galactic capabilities. You see, Admiral Razak continued, her voice almost conversational. When a species evolves on a death world, a planet where everything is trying to kill you, you develop certain instincts. Trust isn't one of them. Preparation is the largest. Dreadnought race is reckoning now. Drifted directly before Krell's flagship, close enough that its massive hull blocked out the stars. Its surface wasn't smooth as he had first thought, but textured with countless weapon ports, sensor arrays, and what appeared to be launch bays for smaller craft. The humans smiled, a predator's expression. Now then, shall we discuss the terms of your surrender, or would you prefer a practical demonstration of what these ships can do? Bride overruled prudence in Krell's response. The United Galactic Armada does not surrender to primitive species, Admiral Razak. We have thousands of years of interstellar conflict experience that your kind lacks. This display of over-engineered vessels doesn't impress us. Krell cut the transmission with a slashing gesture and immediately turned to his tactical officer. Target the nearest human vessel and fire all primary weapons. Let's see if their technology matches their bravado. The bridge crew hesitated for a fraction of a second, long enough for Krell to notice before executing his command. The magnificent Dominion shuddered as its 6 primary plasma cannons discharged, simultaneously sending blinding streaks of superheated matter toward one of the smaller human dreadnoughts. Every officer on the bridge watched the tactical display, expecting to see at least some impact on the target shields. Instead, something unprecedented occurred. Seconds before impact, the space before the human vessel rippled. The plasma bolts didn't strike shields, they simply vanished, as if swallowed by an invisible maw. What just happened? Krell demanded. Science Officer Razak's voice trembled. They appear to have created localized spatial distortions, miniature versions of their wormhole technology. Our weapon fire was redirected, possibly into another dimension entirely. Before Krell could process this information, his ship rocked violently. Warning alarms blared across every station. Multiple impacts across decks 4 through 12, shouted the damage control officer. But their weapons are... Sir, I don't understand the readings. There's no energy signature, no projectile residue relics monitoring. Equipment beeped urgently. Graviton particles, Admiral, they're weaponizing gravity itself, creating micros pockets of extreme gravitational force against our hull. Our shields are calibrated for energy and kinetic weapons. They're passing right through. Another series of impacts sent crew members tumbling across the bridge. Status displays showed 3 of the Armada's support cruisers already disabled their engines. Air launch all fighter squadrons, Krell ordered. Target their weapon emplacements with concentrated fire. 800 fighter craft poured from the Armada's carrier vessels, swarming toward the human dreadnoughts like angry insects. For a moment, Krell felt a surge of confidence. No matter how advanced, no ship could track and target hundreds of small, fast-moving crafts simultaneously. The humans didn't try. Instead, each dreadnought emitted a pulse of blue-white energy that expanded outward in a perfect sphere. Wherever the pulse touched a galactic fighter, the smaller craft simply stopped, all propulsion weapons and life support systems dead. Electromagnetic pulse technology, muttered Commander Plex, but selective. Somehow it's not affecting our capital ships. No, corrected relay, something more sophisticated. They're using quantum field manipulation to temporarily alter the fundamental forces within a specific volume of space. The effect appears precisely calibrated to the power signatures of our fighter craft. Krell watched in horror as his fighters drifted helplessly, their crews likely still alive but completely defenseless. The human dreadnoughts ignored them entirely, focusing their attack on the Armada's capital ships. Sir, called the communications officer, we receiving a broadband transmission from the humans. They broadcasting on all frequencies. Ignore it, Krell snapped. All vessels execute maneuver pattern. Theta 6 regroup at the following coordinates. Before he could finish, a holographic image of Admiral Razak appeared directly on the bridge, a severe breach of the magnificent Dominion security systems. This demonstration is costing lives unnecessarily, Admiral Krell. Her projection stated calmly, "We've disabled your fighters without harming their crews. We could have destroyed them." Instead, consider that carefully. As if to emphasize her point, one of the Armada's heavy cruisers suddenly vanished from the tactical display. Not destroyed, there was no explosion, no debris, simply gone. As if it had never existed. Spatial folding, gasped Relic. They've compressed the entire cruiser and its crew into a pocket dimension. Can they be retrieved? Krell asked, his voice hollow. Theoretically, but we lack the technology to do so. The implication was clear. The humans could remove Krell's entire fleet from existence without actually killing anyone, a demonstration of power so profound that it rendered conventional military doctrine meaningless. Another galactic vessel vanished, then another. Around Krell, his once celebratory bridge crew now stared at their stations with expressions ranging from shock to outright terror. The mighty United Galactic Armada, pride of 87 worlds, was being systematically neutralized without even the dignity of a proper battle. And they were only 3 minutes into the engagement. All remaining vessels formed defensive sphere around the flagship. Krell commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around him. Modulate shield frequencies. Randomly die all remaining countermeasures. The remnants of the once proud Armada scrambled to comply, so the original 73 capital ships, only 31, remained visible on tactical displays. The rest had been folded into pocket dimensions, disabled by targeted systems failures, or had prudently retreated to the edge of the system. Commander Plex approached Krell, keeping his voice low. "Admiral, I must recommend we withdraw. We cannot win this engagement." "And go where exactly?" Krell hissed back. "To those human vessels can create wormholes at will. There is nowhere in this galaxy they cannot follow. It is then perhaps surrender." No. Krell's face frills flushed dark purple with determination. "The Council must be warned about what we face. The entire galactic civilization is at risk." He turned to his communications officer. "Repair a data packet with all sensor readings and battle recordings. Set it to transmit via quantum entanglement to High Command. If